Hi, I'm Marty Schupak. Welcome to Schupak Sports. You're tuning into now. This is the baseball softball practice template number 6. I've been going through different practices, giving you guys ideas. If you're not where you think you should be, uh, stick around. I know I have a number of T-ball coaches that like seeing these templates too. Welcome. And make sure you subscribe to Schupak Sports. And if you can, give me a thumbs up and make a comment. I want to try to keep this format going as long as we could, where it's free, when it's very little advertising, only what the YouTube people put on. But I want to start with a trivia question because I enjoy trivia, as you all know. And here's a baseball trivia. Okay, here we go. Who is the only baseball pitcher to appear in all 7 games of a World Series? Who is the only pitcher to appear in all 7 games of a World Series? And I'm going to give you 2 hints. Well, the first hint, obviously, it's a relief pitcher, but I'm going to give you 4 choices because this is a tough question. Here we go. Is it Mariano Rivera? Is it Darryl Knowles? Is it Sparky Lyle? Or is it Dennis Eckersley? I'll repeat it again. The only pitcher to appear in all 7 games of a World Series, and the choices are Mariano Rivera, Darryl Knowles, Sparky Lyle, and Dennis Eckersley. Okay, here we go. Let's get right into it. Practice template for baseball and softball coaches, parents, and leagues. Number 6. It is so important to warm up. And as I'm discussing warming up, I also want to mention that sports specification, one sport, a lot of studies have come out that, you're doing your sons, daughters, players more harm than good if you're going to keep them in one sport all year round. One of the doctors I followed over the year, I'm sure you've heard his name, Dr. James Andrews. He's an orthopedic used by the best major league players in all sports. He doesn't believe in sports specification. He likes to diversify. And going back, I believe it was John Smoltz, the great pitcher of the Atlanta Braves. He spent a good part of his speech being inducted to Hall of Fame to try to encourage parents to diversify into different sports. And it's pretty good advice, and I would adhere to it. We live in a society where we get addictive to a lot of things. It's so easy to get addictive to baseball and softball. I've seen kids where you have to break them away from these sports. They come home from school. I knew a player I had. The second he came home from school, he just took a bucket of balls, just started throwing it in his backyard into a mat against the wall. Unfortunately, he hurt his arm throwing curveballs too young in age and became actually a very good soccer coach. Okay, so warming up is very important. You want to make sure you jog around the field. I've mentioned this before, arm rotations, very basic things. After that, first drill I want to go over, I call it the cross infield drill. Again, you want to utilize your assistant coaches or parents. In this drill, what I'm trying to do, and what I try to do in all my drill, is give players as many repetitions as possible in a short period of time. Here I have one coach between first base and home hitting the ball to 2 lines opposite him. There's another coach between home and third. He's hitting the balls to 2 lines opposite him. Now, the way this works is a couple of things. We're hitting ground balls. After the first one goes, he goes to the end, of the next line. Then the coach on this side will hit to him. Same thing here. The coach will hit to a player, first person on this line. Then this player will go to the end of this line, and this coach will hit to the first person there. It's a rotation. This is a drill you may not want to do the first week of the season, and you may want to build upon it. At first, you just have one line. Now, a couple of things here. This picture doesn't show it, but I usually put another player next to each coach. They're like the first baseman, and make sure they're spaced away so they don't get hit in the head like my middle son did about 25 years ago. He ended up getting 19 stitches in his head. So you have a player who acts as a first baseman, and he has a bucket, and he can put the balls in the bucket. He could also, as the players get used to it, he tosses a ball, the next ball, to the coach who's hitting it, and it becomes a rhythm. They'll get used to it. A safety issue in this drill, you have to tell the players if it's a mishit, and let's say it's a short grounder going near the pitcher's mound, you tell your players do not charge the ball, because if they charge the ball, they're going to get hit with a crossfire from the other line. But utilized correctly, this drill gives a lot of repetitions in a short period of time. It's called the cross infield drill. Okay, then in this practice, we go to a drill which we've seen before. It's called the line throw drill. Again, I'm trying to give players repetitions and get them used to good habits. Here I'm lining up balls on the third base and shortstop side. Coach is standing here, he's pointing, go. He throws the ball to first base. You have two players at first, one backs up, they rotate. Not every ball, every 3 or 4 balls. After this player goes, he goes to the end of this line. Then this player goes, he goes to the end of this line. Again, this is a good drill that becomes good with the rhythm. You as a coach and the players will get used to it. And it goes fairly quick. And between the cross infield drill and this drill, if you do it for like 5 to 7 minutes, they're going to be getting a lot of repetitions. Okay? So those are 2 drills. I want to get to a couple of base running drills. But before I do, I just want to talk about base running just for a minute. I want to encourage you as a coach, and if you're a parent in baseball or softball, to practice base running at every practice. If your practice is an hour and a half, I would devote 15 to 20 minutes to base running. If you do that, keep in mind, your other coaches in the league aren't going to do what you're doing. Most coaches, when it comes to base running, is when a player is at first base or at third base, they'll instruct the player what to do. I go by the old school of showing them and practicing what to do. And I maintain if you practice good base running fundamentals, you could get a good 1 to 2 extra runs per game. You have that potential. I really believe that. And as the players get older, when you teach them good fundamental base running, if you're coaching high school or a 15, 16, 17-year-old travel league, your team has a reputation to be aggressive base runners and also to be aggressive sliders. Now, I say aggressive, I'm not saying dirty. What happens is it'll transition where the defense will make mistakes because they'll be aware in their head, this guy's sliding into second base pretty fierce. Again, not dirty, but pretty fierce. And there's a good chance that he'll drop the ball and you'll prevent a double play at the least. And listen, I see this happen with my teams and I teach my players, we're going to practice sliding. We're going to be sliding at bases, even though we know we're going to be out. There's a reason for that. We want to have a reputation of being an aggressive base running team. I remember one year in my local league, we won the championship. I believe we played like 25 games. for whatever reason, like I went back to that year in the scorebook and I found that my team was thrown out at home plate 21 times, which is unbelievable. But the moral is the other team knew we were always trying to take the extra base. We were always going to try to take chances. Again, the opportunity has to present itself. If you're down 4-0 in the third inning, you don't want to be as aggressive on the bases. But my team was always aggressive. So the bottom line is for you as a coach, get in the habit of practicing base running. Very fundamental base running to very advanced base running. It'll yield dividends, it'll yield runs, and you'll get a residual effect. And I'll tell you what it is. I found many years ago when I practiced base running, especially with the young kids, 9, 10, 11, and 12, I found for some reason they paid more attention when they were on base than if I didn't practice base running. Okay, I don't have any scientific proof. It's only what I observed. So practice base running. The first drill I do, and I've showed you, is the bounce and run drill where I line players up at second base. And what I'm doing here is I'm either throwing or hitting balls to the third base or shortstop. The player has to bounce off the base. He doesn't go to the next base until the base runner releases the ball to first base. And then he runs and he goes to the next base. Now, what's good about this drill is I usually have a signal with the shortstop and third base. It could be something like this, or I'll scratch my cheek. And that's telling them, and I set it up beforehand, that they'll fake a throw to first base. And early in the season, 80, 70% of the times, I catch a player off the base and they just go up and tag them. This is very effective because you want them to make the mistakes in practice. And it's a great teaching moment too. When you do this drill, when the player from second goes to third, keep him at third and he'll bounce off third and then he'll go home and then he'll go around to the end of the line. It goes pretty quick. Again, we're teaching players how to bounce off the base and when to leave the base upon the release of the throw. Now, another teaching point, you teach the players, if they're at second and the ball's a ground ball to third, they could bounce off further. If they're at third and it's a ground ball to second, they could bounce off further than it was a ground ball to third. Okay? A couple of tricks, I know I used to do it. Once in a while, if I saw an aggressive team and the player was bouncing off the base, I would have the third baseman run to the base and I'd yell out green as a signal. We try to get him out. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Okay? Make your team aware of everything that you could. Again, you could tell your team to do it, or you could show them how to do it. Okay. Now, the next drill, it's a combination base running and bunting drill. And I began using it. It's not a big secret. I got a reputation. It's called the bunt man on third. Less than 2 outs. And I'm a huge proponent of bunting, as bunting seems to be disappearing in Major League Baseball. As you know, and I'll review it again, when we do batting practice, I set up 2 cones between home and third, and 2 more cones between home and first. First 2 pitches, the player has to bunt between it. But nevertheless, players at third base, I have my batter bunt to third base. The third baseman bounces off the base, and upon the release of the ball, he runs home. Very important on this play, he has to slide, not even a question. He has to slide. If the player does it right, he's going to be safe almost 100% of the time. Remember, too, in base running, your fastest base runner is not necessarily your base runner. I've had base runners with average speed that they've had great instinct where I just didn't even correct anything because I could just see they knew what they were doing. They became the best base runners on the team. So the bunt man on third, you give the player the signal, he bunts. Now remember, if the third baseman handles it, he's got to plant his foot. He's got to make the throw from third to first. I teach the base runner, bounce off the base close to where the third baseman is fielding the ball. If he goes very close, you bounce further. But as a coach, you have to keep your eye on the shortstop. You don't want him coming around and them having a signal like I just mentioned. Okay? If the pitcher fields the ball too, you bounce off, but you got to be more careful because the third baseman might stop. Again, you have a good chance of being safe, and you should be safe because the pitcher coming down, he's got to plant his foot, turn around, and throw it to first. And for them to try to get him out, they're throwing home, and the player is sliding under the tag. One thing I didn't mention, baseball fundamentals 101, you want to have them bounce in foul territory if you could. So that's the bounce man on third. Again, you have to decide if you're getting blown out in a game, let's say in the third inning, you lose a 6-0, you have to decide if you want to sacrifice an out for a run. I'm not saying not to do it. Sometimes I've done it just to break the ice, and it helps turn around a game. I've been on both ends of blowouts. I've been on both ends of potential blowouts that have turned around. No game is ever secure, okay? And never listen to the other coach yelling in the first, second, or third inning, oh, you're running up the score, coach. You do what's right, okay? If he thinks you're running up the score, you could just go to him, look, if you think I'm running up the score, if you want to not play the game and you want to just forfeit now, just let me know. And they never, they never do it. They want to play. Okay, bunt man on third. Next drill. It might sound very simplified, and I actually have gone over this in T-ball. And what I do is, this is called cut off the moving ball. I found as a coach, some players, believe it or not, didn't know how to cut off a moving ball, or they took the wrong angle, all right? So, in other words, I line them up in a straight line. One player comes out. I throw the ball. Sometimes you can have them turn the back and say, go. And they turn around. They have to locate the ball and run and cut it off. I had a player one time who I couldn't understand it. He was a great athlete, but he would escort the ball to the fence. I had to teach him. I had to tell, his name was Drew. I said, Drew, you got to cut off the ball, okay? Also, you could pay attention, and I've done it, if the grass is long or it's short, and you could tell the players, look, when you're playing the outfield, they didn't cut the grass this week. It's long grass. You have to charge balls coming in, and if you cut it off, it's going to slow up every time it takes a rotation to you. But the point is, you don't want the ball to get behind them. It'll save base runners from taking extra base. It'll save runs. Okay, after that, and again, this practice is anywhere from an hour and 15 to 2 hours. It depends on what else you want to do. I didn't put it down, but I'm also big on game situations where I like to review 1, 2, or 3 situations that came up during the game. And it doesn't have to be just failures and what to do right. You could show them, set up a success and a great play that a fielder made, and you could set it up and show them what happened again. But I go to base batting practice, and I mention quickly 2 cones. First 2 pitches, they have to bunt it between the 2 cones. 1 extra pitch for every ball that goes between it. Make sure the on-deck hitter is ready to hit. I'm just reading some notes I wrote up. Double on-deck hitter is either doing the tee or hitting off or doing the toss drill. You want them to bat in order when they arrive at practice. I mentioned this. It motivates them to get to practice early. The first one at practice is number one. He bats first. The one who arrives at second, he's number two. He bats second. Okay. You make sure if you have a field, your league's field, you have an L screen, move to the base of the mound, you throw more strikes. And that's it for the template number 6, baseball and softball. Please subscribe. I'm going to get to the trivia question. As far as products, I take these, and that was a little bit of a technical glitch. These practices are coming right from this book, Baseball Coach and the Guide for the Youth Coach and Parent. I don't recommend you buying my products if you don't have the money, but this is one product I recommend. I spent a lot of time, and in my impatience to get this book out, okay, turned out I counted, there's 19 grammatical errors, which I apologize for. But I recommend you get this book. If you want a smaller book with practices, my latest book, Championship Baseball Drills. I have 115 drills. You pick and choose. They're all good drills. I've used them. They're all battle tested. If you think some of the drills are too simple, you don't have to use them. So those are 2 products. And let's get back. Please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you could. Let's get back to the trivia question before we close this out. Who's the only pitcher to appear in all 7 games of World Series? Was it Mariano Rivera, Darrell Knowles, Sparky Lyle, or Dennis Eckersley? The answer is, in 1973, Darrell Knowles pitched all 7 games as the Oakland A's beat the New York Mets in 7 games, 4 games to 3. I remember that series well. I live in New York, and I'm a big New York fan where I follow every team. I'm one of the few fans that likes both the Yankees and the Mets. But that series, I remember the Mets were ahead 3-2. And I think they had Matlack and Tom Seaver ready to go the next 2 games. Some old-time Met historians will say the Mets should have pitched Steve Stone. I'm not quite sure about that. But nevertheless, the answer is Darrell Knowles. And another reason why I was going for this series, being an old-time Yankee fan, Yogi Berra was coaching the Mets, so I really wanted him to win. Okay, I remember watching part of that series with my grandfather, who taught me about baseball. So we're going to close it out for Schupak Sports. This has been Marty Schupak. I'll meet you at third base.